Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Sustainable Activism webinar. My name is Lisa Levinson, and I am the director of the Sustainable Activism campaign. And what we do here is offer emotional and spiritual support for animal activists. And today, I'm very excited to introduce our featured speaker. We like to bring in people who can share tools with you that you can use in your daily life to help reduce stress and improve your activism. So today, we have Cheney Creamer, and she's the founder of One Green Square Wellness Consulting, which is an organizational, and she is an organizational development consultant, a HeartMath certified coach, and horticultural therapy specialist. She weaves together the science of the heart and the brain with a passion for nature, help individuals, teams, and organizations build resilience to stress, adapt to change, and improve communications. So you can check out her website, onegreensquare.ca, and I'll put that in the chat box and in the feed for those who've joined us. And feel free to contact Cheney, and she will let you know a little bit more about her upcoming programs, personal coaching, or for customized wellness workshops. I'll share her email address with you so you can get in touch with her if you'd like. Without any further ado, I'm really excited to introduce you to Cheney, and she's going to present about how to dissolve activist stress via nature and science. Hi, Cheney.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you here with us. I know you have all kinds of special tools and techniques to share with us today.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. I really appreciate you inviting me to come and share, and I'm just so grateful, and thank you to everyone who's joining us today, either online or live or watching us later. So welcome, everyone. I'm excited to get started.
Wonderful. Well, why don't you take it away, Cheney?
All right, so I'm just going to share my screen here. So give me just one moment while I just pull up my PowerPoint presentation. Here we go. All right, Lisa, do you want to just give me a heads up, make sure that is good?
Yes, it's good.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you. So again, welcome everyone, and thank you so much to Lisa and to In Defense of Animals for bringing me here today to share with you. I'm always delighted to share with anyone who's looking for tips and hints to dissolve our stress. So I will just jump right in and get started. So when Lisa actually first posted this event on Facebook, she wrote this brilliant question that kind of summed up our conversation really well. And so I wanted to just start with this. And she had asked the question that, what if the most effective stress-busting tools were actually accessible to us anytime? And so I'm here to tell you that not only are they actually accessible to us anytime, but that we can actually really benefit quite greatly from using them anytime and anywhere, and not just in the times when we're under stress, but actually applying them throughout the day in little bits and pieces to help dissolve our stress away. So I'll give you just a quick overview of kind of the three main things we're going to look at today. So first and foremost, why are quick and simple stress-busting tools so important for us? Lots of different reasons, but we'll focus on a few. And then what types of practices can actually help build resilience to stress that can be used anywhere and anytime? And some of them are in as little as 11 seconds. So I work a lot with very short, quick things that we can do in the moment to keep ourselves balanced and centered. And then right at the end, I'm going to give us just a really quick glimpse into a process that I've created that really helps us to talk about how do I practice any of these tools. So whether it's the tools that we're talking about today or other wellness tools or stress tools that you already have. So we're going to take a look at what is a step-by-step process that we can actually walk through so that we know we're actually getting the greatest benefits from whatever tool we're choosing to use. So this first question then, why are these quick and simple stress busting tools so important? So first and foremost, it's that stress doesn't actually have a schedule. So when we think about stress and how stress happens in your life, I don't know about you, but for me, it doesn't just happen on, Thursday at 5 o'clock. It doesn't wait for us for that special hour to provide us with stress. And yet often that's where we find our remedies. We will have, we'll take 1 hour after a particular stressful event, or we'll, have a meditation practice that we practice either an hour in the morning or an hour at night. But our stress actually happens all throughout the day. Some stressors are bigger than others, some are minor annoyances, some are big traumas. And so we have to actually notice that sometimes our remedies don't necessarily match the same way that stress is coming into our lives. So this is a picture of my mom. So my mom has a term that I quite love that she shared with me recently that I have no idea where she got this term from, so I cannot credit it to anyone other than my mom. But my mom calls herself a crisis meditator. And she says that she's a very good crisis meditator. And what she means by that is that whenever there's a crisis or something goes wrong in her life, or she has a trauma or she has an event that causes her a lot of stress, well, that's when she reaches into her toolkit and goes back to her meditation practice. And so I think a lot of us fall into this practice of being really good crisis meditators. And so after a big traumatic event or a big activist event that has, maybe caused us a lot of stress, we often get quite good at, looking at things after that event. But what we sometimes forget is that we can actually prepare for stress. So if we look at the lessons from nature, nature doesn't just wait for a big stressful event to happen and then it tries to deal with it. Well, there are ways that nature knows that stress is going to happen. This is inevitable. These things are going to happen in our lives the same way as it happens in nature. And so we need to start understanding how we can actually prepare for stress and look at building resilience to stress in a slightly different way. So when we look at building resilience to stress, I want to just take a quick look at what does resilience really mean when we're talking about resilience to stress. So resilience is the capacity to both prepare for, recover from, and adapt in the face of stress, challenge, or adversity. So as I said, we've gotten pretty good at this recovering from, a lot of us have meditation practices or yoga practices or movement-based practices or breathing practices or playing with our dog or gardening or whatever it is that we recover from stress. But we have to start looking at these other practices of what can I do to prepare myself? How can I start practicing things when I'm not under stress so that when I am under stress, they just come naturally? So that I've practiced it so often and so many times that, when I need it, it's absolutely handy. And I don't have to reach back into that toolkit that I haven't looked at since the last crisis. And we also want to think about what are techniques that we can use to adapt in the moment, not just after stress, but in order to make sure that we are staying coherent and calm and clear and connected while we're right in the middle of some really stressful situations. So I always like to say that ongoing stress requires ongoing remedies. So as we're taking our little steps throughout the day, what are the little things that we can be doing for, 3 seconds here, or 30 seconds here, or 2 minutes as we walk to the bus stop, or, an extra minute as we pet our dog or play with our cat? So what are the things that we can do throughout the day that provide us with those ongoing remedies rather than just looking at the recovery stage of the remedies? So that then brings us to the next question that I asked, which was what types of practices can actually help us build this type of resilience that we can use anywhere and anytime, that we can just pull out and use at the drop of a hat? So these next things that I'm going to share with you, these are some of my favorite tools. I want to talk first about kind of what are the the general types of tools. So to do that, I look at what I call the four corners of wellness, kind of like the best practices of wellness, or these are types of tools that we should all be looking at, trying to integrate or kind of include in our day in some way or shape or form. So first and foremost, probably won't be a surprise to most of you on the call today, is one-to-one connection with nature. So again, there's lots of different tools, lots of different ways that we can connect with nature, but we have to remember that that's one of the types of tools that we're going to want to integrate into our day. Next is mindfulness and meditation. So again, there's lots of different mindfulness practices, lots of different meditation practices out there, but in order to have a good foundation of wellness, we're going to want to include some form of mindfulness or meditation. Next is open, authentic expression. So this is something that often gets forgotten as kind of a cornerstone to our wellness. But as activists, this becomes really important because we all know that actually one of the ways that we stay well is by actually expressing ourselves through our activism and standing up for what we believe and speaking our minds when we see injustices. So this open, authentic expression, there's lots of different ways that we can use this, or tools that can help us to express ourselves, and we're going to look at just one today. And then last but never least is movement and stillness. And so we know that both moving our body as well as making our body still has a lot of benefits for our mind, for our body, for our spirituality, for just our way of being. And so again, there's lots of different tools that we can practice around movement or stillness, and we're going to just take a look at one of my favorites today. So let's just start by looking at this first one-to-one connection with nature. So when we're talking about practices that can help us stay grounded, one of the things that often comes to us is different connections with nature. So when we think about connecting with nature, we often think about things that are on the outside of us. So we think about plants, we think about animals, we think about the soil or the elements, the water, the air. And yet what's really important to remember when we're talking about ways to connect with nature is that we may not always be able to get out for a walk in the woods or to get out to put our feet in the grass. Certainly a lot of the animals that we're working with don't have the option to just put their feet in the grass to feel better. And so what we need to remember is that we are nature. We are not separate from this system. We are actually a part of this system. And so when we think about our own bodies, we can use our own connection with our body, with our breath. That is a way of connecting with nature. So when we think about the food that we eat, that's an automatic connection with nature that we all do. Even things as just paying attention to the sensations in our body. Our body is nature. And so reminding ourselves that in those times when, of course, it's ideal to be able to get out for a walk in the forest and spend a nice hour, sitting on a rock and watching, a stream go by. But we don't always have that option. When we're in the middle of a stressful situation, we can't say, I'm sorry, hang on, I'm just going to go for a walk down the street and go into the woods, and then I'll be back and we'll continue this conversation. So we have to notice, what are the ways that we can connect with nature in the moment, right here, right now, by connecting with ourselves, connecting with the small pieces of nature that might be around us. So there's been a lot of research in the last decade around horticultural therapy or nature-based therapies that talk about some of the most simplest things that you would never imagine could possibly have an impact on your body, really absolutely have a deep impact on your body and your mental state. So there's an excellent book that I highly recommend for everyone who's interested in this topic. It's called Your Brain on Nature. And one of the things that they've found through a lot of research is something as simple as having a plant at or within view of an office workstation can actually significantly decrease the risk of sick leave. So for any of you who are interested in more details on that study, I'm happy to talk about that at length later on. But just know that some of the simplest things can actually have a really profound impact on our body. So we don't need to have the full hour-long walk in the woods, which absolutely is ideal, but when we don't have it, just a simple glance at a plant or something around us can actually have a really big impact on our body. So go ahead, notice nature. It is all around you. You may be surprised at all of the little places that you can find nature. So don't ignore those little plants that are, poking out of the cracks in the sidewalk. Give them some acknowledgement and really just actually noticing them and allowing a nice feeling of connecting with nature to wash over you for even as little as 11 seconds can actually have a really big impact. So notice nature wherever it is. Notice it around you. You may be surprised. You may start to notice it more than you did before. Also start changing your perspective on what is nature. Often we get trapped in the thoughts when we're in kind of a concrete jungle or we're spending a lot of time in the city. We get frustrated by not feeling like we're connected by nature because we're surrounded by things like concrete sidewalks instead of, a nice grassy path or a forested path to walk on. And yet what's really important to remember is that even though the concrete has been changed and it's been crushed up and it's all got all kinds of things mixed into it, what we are walking on is little bits and pieces of the mountains, of the rocks that used to be, perhaps under the ocean or high up on a mountaintop. And if we start to recognize and honor the sacred mountains that are beneath our feet, that we are still walking on, even when we're in the city, then we can really start to actually bring that connection with nature into us in a much deeper and much more present way, or in a place a little bit void of nature. Shift our perspective, we'll notice that it's there. So I also like to always tell people to look up, look around, and look often. So a lot of us with screens and computers and tablets and phones, we actually spend a lot of our day actually with our head slightly lowered and our eyes about half shut. So as I'm sure you can imagine, what signal does that send to the brain? Well, it sends the signal that we want to go to sleep. And so even just by looking up and looking around can allow our mind to take in more information and can allow our mind to get clear. And so if we use nature or the sky or the trees around us as well, it's kind of like we get that added bonus effect of both looking up and also connecting with nature. So look up, look around, look often. So then let's take a look at this second part of mindfulness and meditation. So again, there's lots of different meditation techniques out there, lots of different mindfulness tools. There doesn't seem to be any right or wrong with them. What I have found and what most people recognize, and you will hear everywhere, is the best meditation is the one that you do. So that applies for both short meditations and long meditations. So just know that whatever practice that you're practicing, even if it's something as simple as just one nice deep breath in that you focus on the breath and then you exhale, even just that simple change can actually start to make a difference. So notice that just even adding little notes around your house or little reminders to say, just breathe, even just taking 3 nice breaths can actually have quite a transformation on your body. So for one of my favorite tips on how do you breathe, we know that just breathing in, focusing on it, and breathing out can help. But I want to talk a little bit about a simple HeartMath technique. For those of you who aren't familiar with the HeartMath Institute, I highly recommend taking a look. You can see on the screen there. I'll also tell you, so for those of you who can't see it. So HeartMath.org, so heart, and then the word math, MATH.org. You can find all kinds of information on there about these different techniques. So what I want to start with is it's a very simple breath technique, and it's designed to help help us get to a state of coherence, which I'm going to talk a little bit more later. But essentially, this is a really good technique for just grounding us in the moment. It can be used as a technique that we want to, if we're preparing ourselves, we can use this technique all throughout the day, as many times as you can think of it. Do this technique. We can also use it in the moment when we're actually in a stressful situation or after we're out of the stressful situation as well. So I want to just practice this with you. So for those of you, yes, if you're driving, feel free to just continue driving and just follow the instructions. And yet for those of you who can take a little bit more relaxation, get your body kind of settled into your seat, get your feet on the floor, get comfy. And so it's very simple. Just focus your attention in the area of your heart. If it helps, you can place your hand on your heart. And if you place your hand on your heart, what you'll notice is you automatically start breathing a little bit deeper and a little bit slower. So as you focus your attention on the area of your heart, I want you to now just imagine that your breath is actually flowing in and out of your heart or chest area. And so just notice that you can breathe a little bit slower and a little bit deeper than usual, about 4 to 5 seconds in, 4 to 5 seconds out. Just whatever rhythm is natural and comfortable for you. Just keeping your attention on your heart and just imagining that your breath is flowing into your heart and flowing out from your heart. No right or wrong way to visualize that. Just imagine it going into the heart and out from the heart. So now hopefully you've noticed, even just in a few nice breaths like that you can start to notice your body shifting, that you can start to notice perhaps your shoulders lowering a bit, perhaps your body feels a little bit more calm. So this is a technique that I encourage you to practice with your eyes open. It doesn't need to be an eyes closed practice. As I said, this is intended to be practiced while you're right in the middle of a difficult conversation or situation. And so we'll take this practice just a little bit deeper as well in the next stage. So notice that there are things that we can do that can help remind us to take these breaths. So imagine that if every time you picked up your cell phone, you decided to just take one nice heart-focused breath into your heart and out through your heart. Well, we look at our cell phones on average anywhere between 150 to 300 times a day, and I think that's going up. So imagine that if you actually took 150 conscious breaths throughout your day, imagine the change that that could actually have on your physiology. Now, lots of people I talk to say that's way too many, that's impossible. So just start with a few, start with 10, start with 3, whatever is easy for you. But just notice that even in just one deep breath, our physiology actually starts to change. Then next, looking at this open, authentic expression. So how can we be sure that when we are speaking our voice or we're standing our ground as activists, that we are actually speaking with authenticity and that we are actually able to speak and deliver our message in a way that allows us to be heard, in a way that is clear, in a way that is that connects us with the other people around us. And so you've heard me use the word coherence a few times now. So when we think about the word coherence, if I'm speaking coherently, then essentially what that means is that I'm clear, that I'm able to be understood. And so when we look at the state of coherence for our body, we can take that just one level deeper. So coherence is actually a state of optimal functioning in which all of your physical systems are in sync and balanced. So it means that your heart, your mind, your emotions, as well as your nervous system, your hormonal system, and your immune systems are all working together in a coordinated manner. So imagine that if we could elicit a state of coherence where all of these systems were working together, that is what it takes in order to be able to then communicate with coherence, to be able to be clear and understood and know that we are actually standing our ground and speaking with authenticity. So how do we do that? Well, the HeartMath techniques are actually designed specifically to elicit that state of coherence. So the HeartMath techniques are not particularly meditation techniques per se. Meditation is always essentially designed to relax the body, to lower the heart rate. But the HeartMath techniques are designed to bring you into whatever state is most needed at that time to bring you coherence. So let me explain that a little bit deeper. So when we're looking then at resilience to stress and this state of coherence, coherence building tools like the heart-focused breathing and the next technique I'm about to talk about, coherence building tools bring about physiological changes in our body that are actually key to being able to communicate effectively, and they're key to being able to build and sustain our resilience to stress. So why is that important? Well, we know that if we're in a state of coherence, that we can actually pass that coherent state on to others around us. And so if we are calm, cool, collected, and compassionate, then that will be translated and passed on to the others around us. So we can help them stay calm as well. So it might be other activists, it might be other people that are involved in the scenario that we actually really want to make sure that they know that we're speaking clearly, that they understand our message, that they know why we're there. And for some of us, most importantly, for those of us who are working with animals, this is also a state that we can pass on to the animals that we're working with. So particularly if we are working with animals that are in distress, we can actually help pass on to them a sense of calm, a sense of love, a sense of compassion and peace, instead of passing on what may be our panic or our state of unease or our state of distress or our state of frustration with the situation that we see them in. And so we can actually pass on this state of coherence to the animals as well and help them stay calm and feel loved and connected instead of feeling afraid as well. So to talk about this technique that really helps bring us to the state of coherence, I want you to just imagine some different images in your mind right now, because different images actually bring different sensations and reactions in the brain and the body. So even for those of you who can't see these pictures, that's fine. I want you to just imagine a big, tall tree, and you're looking up, way up into the branches of that tree. And just notice the sensation that that causes in your body. And then notice the sensation that's caused in your body if I talk to you about a still, calm pond covered with lily pads and reflecting things. That will probably give you a different sensation in your body. What about a forested scene where maybe there's just a little animal peeking through the forest trees and you feel surrounded in a nice, quiet, calm, cool forest? Or what about the sensations that might come in your body if you visualize a rushing waterfall cascading down a huge 200 or 300 foot cliff? So what you notice is these different images in our mind actually create different sensations and reactions in the body. So these different sensations and reactions in our body are actually the key to being able to hang on to that sensation and pass that on through coherence. So when we talk about these emotions, we think about a lot of these feelings that we get from different nature scenes as renewing emotions. So any other renewing emotions can be things like gratitude or compassion. Things that are very simple to kind of grasp onto often are things like gratitude. So being able to hang on to these emotions for even just 11 extra seconds in our body that actually creates the measurable state of coherence. And I say that it is measurable because there are actually devices, much like a heart monitor, that we can actually measure our body and see if we are in a state of coherence. So I want to walk us through a really quick technique again, that it starts with heart-focused breathing that we've just practiced. So this technique is called quick coherence, but it's got an added, my slide, it says NBT, that's nature-based therapy. So we're using just an extra twist of nature-based therapy for this technique. Start by just choosing any one of those scenes that brings you a feeling that you would like to embody. So maybe you want to embody calm and peace. And so you maybe imagine that calm, still pond. Or maybe you actually want to embody the movement and the passion and the excitement that comes from the rushing waterfall. So you can imagine that in some situations we do want to be calm, and that's the state that we want to bring into our body. But there are other times where we want to bring in the compassion and the passion into our body. And so we can choose different images in our mind to elicit different sensations. So choose any one of those scenes or sensations that you really want to bring into your body. And start by just heart-focused breathing. So again, focus your attention on the area of your heart. Imagine that you are breathing into your heart and breathing out from your heart. Breathing just a little bit slower and a little bit deeper. And now as you're breathing into your heart, I want you to really make a sincere attempt to re-experience that regenerative or renewing feeling that you've chose. If it's hard to grasp, that's fine. Just bring in appreciation or care for someone or something in your life. Just really breathe that sensation into your heart and out from your heart. And so just doing this quick coherence technique for even just 30 seconds can really start to change your physiology so that your body and your mind all comes into that coherent state, so everything is working together, so that your heart and your mind are aligned, so that you're speaking from your heart, not just saying what comes first to your mind. So notice that this gives us the ability to now start to self-regulate our emotions and our responses to stress. So we can choose which emotion or which state we want to pull into our body by simply pulling it into our body through this quick coherence technique. Just the combination of starting with heart-focused breathing and then making a real sincere attempt to just breathe that feeling and re-feel that feeling into our body and exhaling it back out into the world. So, getting to our last little tip and technique, talking about movement and stillness. So I want to just quickly go through this small technique that you can practice now if you've got space to practice in. It might be a bit difficult to practice while you're watching a webinar, but absolutely just jot this down, or when you get the recording later, you can practice this at home. So this is just a way to get us connected with our body. So again, we can practice this as we are walking to a stressful event. We can practice this just on our regular daily basis so that it becomes a natural practice for us to notice our body, notice our mind, notice what happens. I often use this when I'm walking to a bus stop or walking to my car. Anytime where you have a moment to just notice yourself and your movement, this is a really good practice. So it starts by just walking across the room or walking to your car or to the bus stop, just taking about, 10 or 15 steps just at your normal pace. Just as you would normally walk across the room or walk to your desk or walk to your car or the bus stop. Take about 10 or 15 steps just at your normal pace. Notice how that feels. Probably just feels fairly normal, no extra mental chatter, nothing else in the body, normal. So now what I want you to do is do the same thing. So an extra 10 or 15 paces either back across the room or wherever you happen to be walking. Just the next 10 or 15 paces, walk about 30% faster. Notice how that feels. For those of you practicing, I'll give you a moment to just walk a little bit quicker, across the room and back. And so just notice, what was your experience? Did it create more mental chatter? Did it create less? There's no right, there's no wrong. Don't judge it. Just notice what's happening. Next, take the next 10 or 15 steps at 30% slower. So either just go back across the room, walk over to your printer, walk over to pet the dog, whatever it is. Just go about 30% slower. And again, just notice what your experience was. So again, what your experience is today may be very different than what your experience is tomorrow. You might have found that that faster paced maybe gave you energy, it felt really good, it got everything flowing, or maybe that faster paced actually felt really rushed and felt absolutely uncomfortable. And maybe the slower pace felt really nice and really relaxing. Or maybe the slower pace actually made you feel kind of agitated and like, oh, can we not hurry up? Why is this going so slow? And so just notice your mental chatter. Notice how easy it is to cause different mental chatter by just walking across the room at a different pace. And know that there's going to be times where we have to walk slower. Maybe we're walking with someone else who has an injury. Maybe we're walking with an animal who actually needs to go slower. And so this, again, just reminds us to kind of keep our mental chatter in check, to just notice it and respect that that's just what's happening in the moment and go back to practicing. So with this, I always like to say it's just about practice, notice, and then respect where you are. No judgment, no right, no wrong, and just go back to practicing, noticing, and respecting where you are. So those are 4 of my favorite tips that come along with our 4 corners of wellness. As I said, there are lots more practices that come along with all of these 4 different types of wellness practices. But even just trying to insert kind of one of these types of practices into each day so that you're always having some way to connect with nature. Maybe it's just a mindful eating meditation as you take the first bite of your food. Looking at mindfulness and meditation, what are some of those practices? Remembering to use your open, authentic expression as a wellness tool, as a way to keep yourself grounded, to stay connected. And then always using your movement and your stillness as another way to keep yourself well. So now I said at the end I was going to talk about how to practice any of these tools to get the most benefits for yourself and for those around you, whether that's other people, whether that's animals, whether that's your family. So I want to just walk through a really quick process that I want you to imagine any tool that you use. It doesn't matter if it's something as simple as just taking one nice heart-focused breath, or it might be a very involved meditation technique, or maybe you have a practice for self-expression that is like dance or painting or gardening or cooking. So it doesn't matter what the tool is, just think about how you practice that tool and think about this process. So this is what I call the 4 guiding practices. So first and foremost, with any tool, everything starts with awareness. So again, there are lots of different practices that can help you increase your awareness. But whatever practice you're using, even if it's something as simple as your heart-focused breath, well, it starts with being aware. It starts with being aware of yourself, being aware of the others around you, being aware of your surroundings. So just checking in with your awareness. After you've checked in with your awareness, even if it's just for 1 or 2 seconds, our mind then, once we've become aware, we have the ability to then focus our attention. And we can choose how and where we focus our attention. So with the heart-focused breathing, well, we intentionally focus our attention on the area of our heart. What we know is that actually allows some of the functioning cells in our heart to become more active so that our heart and our mind are actually connecting and communicating. So whatever practice you're doing, once you have awareness, then it's about where do I want to place my attention for my best wellness. After that, it's about immersing yourself in that practice. So I'm aware, I've then chosen where I'm going to direct my attention, and then I am just going to practice. And in the practice, it's the same as what I said about the mindful movement. Practice, notice, and respect. Then just go back to practice. Practice, notice, respect where you are. Don't judge it. No good, no bad, no right, no wrong. That just happens to be where you are. And just go back to immersing yourself in the practice. So even if it's just breathing, by the time you get to immersing yourself in the practice, you might only be on your third breath. But you've become aware, you've decided where you're going to place your attention, and you are now immersing yourself, even just for another 2 or 3 breaths, in that practice. And then the last step, which will not be any surprise to most of you, is about integration. So how do I integrate what I've just learned from even those 3 breaths into my mind, into my heart, into my body? So when I'm teaching this and using these guiding practices for many, many years now, and I always used to look at integration as, what have I learned? What have I learned from this, and how can I apply that learning into my everyday life? And I've started to look at it just a little bit recently from today. So that when we're thinking about integration, it's not just what did I learn, it's not just something that comes from our head, but what can I actually harvest from today? What is it that is going to nourish me right now in the moment? And then what are some of the things that are going to nourish me later? What are some of the things that I'm going to save and cherish that are going to continue to nourish me later on? So just take a moment now and just think about, even just from this webinar that we've now had today, what can you harvest from today? What are the small bits that you can take away from just this last 45 minutes that can nourish you right now? Maybe it's just the practice of just heart-focused breathing. Maybe it's something I said about how ongoing stress requires ongoing remedies. Whatever it is, just start to notice, what can you harvest today? What can you use that will nourish you right now? And what can you cherish and nourish you later? So just a really quick review. We're in our last couple minutes, so quick review and just a few next steps. So just a review of what we've been through already. Notice nature everywhere. Look up, look around, look often. You will be surprised at all of the places nature can be found, especially right in your own body. Heart-focused breathing. This is great for using on-the-spot, grounding yourself, connecting both with yourself, with animals, with other people. That quick coherence, really making sure that we're actually choosing the state that we want to be in so that we can be most effective in the moment. Sometimes we do want to be calm. Sometimes we want to be passionate and bold. Know that we can actually choose what state we want to be in and pull that into our body. And mindful movement, practice, notice, and respect. So if any of you are interested in learning more about my 4 guiding practices of awareness, attention, immersion, and integration, I have a full 6-week webinar series that is a live webinar series. It's a very small group session. I like to keep it very intimate so we can share our experiences. My next program is actually starting in July. So I've actually extended my early bird deadline just this week. So my early bird deadline is now extended till next Friday, June 15th. So please go ahead, take a look if you'd like to kind of go deeper into those practices. That's available for you. And with that, thank you, thank you, thank you. Me and my lovely dog Ginger have been very happy to come and share with you today. And so all of my contact information is there for you. I think Lisa has probably put it in the chat box for you as well. So with that, I'm open to any questions or comments or things anyone would like to know about.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Janie. That was such a great webinar. I really enjoyed the heart math breathing. That is very special, and it's also a way to, I think, can be very useful for activists because in the moment, if we're at a demonstration and if somebody does say a comment that's rude or hurtful, then we can go back and make that choice. What do I want to think about right now? And what's going to bring me into that state of mind that will bring harmony rather than escalate the issue? And that can be used if we're having a tense discussion with family also about our values, or it could relate to some people in the animal rights movement are participating in open rescues and really doing one-on-one contact with the animals. And I think having that peaceful sense of being when you're interacting with an animal is so key, especially if you're at one of the vigils and you want to give them, the animals there, a sense of peace and compassion. It's very important. So these techniques that you described are so relevant to animal activists. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome, Lisa.
Yeah, and I wanted to check in with anyone who's with us today. We have folks who've joined us through the webinar that we're doing, and we also have folks that are joining us on In Defense of Animals Facebook page and on other pages where this is shared. So you're welcome to, in the chat box, you can type a question if you have one. If you're with us on the telephone, you can press *4, and then we'll be able to hear you, and it will unmute you, and we'll be able to hear what you have to say if you have a question. Another way to communicate is if you're on Facebook and you want to type in the chat box there in the news feed, then I'll be able to read it. Just welcoming your questions, your comments, anything that you have to say about these techniques. Great. And just looking around, seeing if we have any in the different chat box. We do have people who've shared the importance of nature and how helpful that can be to be grounding and reconnect yourself. I've noticed comments like that about what it's like to be connected to wildlife or wild animals and other even just green plants. I think that can be helpful too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So a specific question, I was just at an event that there was a large-scale open rescue. This was put together by a group called Direct Action Everywhere, and I was just wondering, like, when people are hoping to save a chicken that was in a factory farm environment, what kind of combination of techniques would you use to bring about that sense of peace and harmony?
Really good question, Lisa. So yeah, I love how you phrased that question, was actually perfect too. What combination of techniques, right? Because it often is. It's not just one beautiful thing that, is kind of the nugget that's going to get us to what we need. And so in those situations, I would be really looking at making sure that I'm doing some prep ahead of time, right? So even before I enter in, even if it's not just the moments right before I walk into the building perhaps, but maybe even in the week prior, any time that I have prior, I can start to practice with some of these techniques so that when I am in the moment there, they feel like they're second nature, they're simple, they're easy. So starting to practice, as soon as we get the notification that, hey, this is happening on Thursday, if we get that notification on Tuesday, starting to use more of that heart-focused breathing, kind of even in the days up to it. Then what I would recommend when you are in that moment is trying to, again, if you can, the more you can prep, the better. But sometimes we even forget to prep because it's stressful. And when we're under stress, we forget these things. So what I would say is try to have a visualization either in your mind or a small tactile object that you can put in your pocket to help remember the state that you want to be in when you actually enter into the building or the space. So for example, I grew up around what we call pussy willows, and they get these beautiful little fuzzy little toes that are on the willow in the springtime, and I often have one of those in my pocket. And so it's just my little physical reminder that when I put my hand in my pocket, I feel that softness. I remember that I want to be soft, that I want to have that renewing energy of springtime in me. And so I use that little physical sensation with the visualization of spring and renewal and the sense that that gives me to really ground myself in that moment. So having both the visualization of the pussy willows and emerging in the spring, as well as that physical sensation of that soft little pussy willow in my pocket, combined with then that quick coherence of really breathing that into my body and really feeling that softness, even just for 10 to 15 seconds, really re-feeling that feeling will actually change all of the chemistry in my body. My endocrine system will change. The hormones in my body will change. The adrenaline in my body will change. And so by combining the heart-focused breath with the intention of what state do I want to bring in, combined with some little physical reminder that is something that's as small as we can put in our pocket to really help ground us, I find those kind of combinations is what works best for me. And so, it might be a little rock in your pocket, it might be a little leaf, or, whatever it is, just some small little item that you can actually have with you. Some of us, it might be a necklace, right? It might be jewelry that we can have, that even just having that in our hand for just a moment can help us to reintegrate that feeling that will bring us to a state of coherence.
I really like the touchstone effect, what you're describing. That's so important because our tactile sense really brings us into the moment. It helps to ground us. And so having that, I often have a stone in my pocket, and I really like that idea just to help us because it's something very quick that we can do, and it will remind us. It's a good reminder tool. Just where do we want to be? What do we want to bring in this moment? And also, animals have this tendency they communicate telepathically, so they really do. They understand the energy that we're expressing ourselves with, and they also can. There's studies to show that they can see what we're thinking. So if we're imagining this peaceful place or this softness that we want to bring to them, then they may respond to us very differently with an openness.
Absolutely. And we just know that we can send that healing to an entire room full of animals, that our electrical energy actually physically emulates from our body at least 9 to 12 feet away from us. And so we absolutely can be impacting these animals in a really, really potent way that, some people might think, oh, well, it's, kind of woo-woo or airy-fairy, but this is real physical science that we know is absolutely impacting their body and their minds and their little souls. So the more that we can practice that in their presence, the better off they're going to be. Even if they're staying in that situation and we can't rescue them all, we know that we have given all of the animals in that space just a little taste of that calm and compassion from us.
That's really a nice way to put it. And I'm also imagining that this could work in a less stressful situation, but maybe even going to the vet or something that we experience on a daily basis. We can bring that sense of calmness to our animals or the animals that we've rescued, those that are in our care.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually do a lot of work with vets and with other caregivers as well of animals, and it's amazing the transformation that they can see when an animal's in distress, and they just take a couple nice heart-focused breaths, and it's amazing how quickly that the animals will respond.
Then I have one other question for you, and this is just regarding conflict. So when we find ourselves in conflict, would we use these techniques? What would you advise?
Yeah, good question. So again, much the same way. So in terms of the heart-focused breath is a really good one that again we can use when our eyes are open, when we're right in the middle of a dialogue. And so it is sometimes even just actually putting your hand on your chest, and it doesn't have to be extreme. Just a very gentle pressure on your chest while you're having the conversation. This will actually, just that gentle pressure on your chest area will actually start to release some good hormones in the body and different chemicals and things like that. So combining just that with even just 1 or 2 deep breaths with the focus on the heart, it brings all of our energy down from our mind and our brain into the other organs that are important to us as well to speak from. And so often in conflict, we get kind of pulled up into our headspace and into, well, this is what I want to say, and this is important to say. And before that person has even finished their sentence, we know what we want to say. And so to get out of that pattern of just really wanting to say what we want to say, if we can focus our energy back into our heart often has much different messages than what our mind has. And so if we can slow down enough to listen to what the heart wants to say, it may be spoken or come out in a very different way than if we just stay in the top part of our body and our head.
That sounds essential, is connecting with the body and not just the mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have one last question, and this is about when a person has many tasks to do and they get a little flustered and overwhelmed, like how to decide, how to bring a sense of clarity so you can figure out what and prioritize what to do next.
That's a really good one. So I actually have a little practice that I do. I'm a bit of a compulsive to-do list maker, so I often have multiple tasks that I'm working on at a time. So I do something that's really, it might sound simple, but it can be quite transformational, and it's called a to-be list. So we all know about to-do lists. We all have a list. Some of us make it in our head, some of us write it out. But I encourage you, when you have a lot of things to do, is to just take mental stock for just a moment. And if you are, if you're a physical list writer, write out, these are the tasks I need to do. And then just beside the tasks that you have to do, just take even an extra 2 or 3 seconds to write out, how do you want to be during each of those tasks? So you might say, well, when in this first task, I want to be calm and I want to be compassionate. Maybe the next task, you want to actually be efficient and quick. Okay, there's no right, no wrong. It's just that's how you want to be when you do that next task. So writing out just a little short to-be list next to these are all the tasks that I have to do. How do I want to be when I do these tasks? Can start to show you, first and foremost, that I actually have a choice. I get to choose how do I operate when I do all these different things that I have to do today. And even if at the end of the day you've only done half of them and you realized you weren't really calm and compassionate when you did that, or you weren't very efficient when you did that, at least it's setting the intention. So it's that first step of just saying, well, this is how I would like to be when I do these things. And then you can reflect on it the next day and say, oh, well, maybe I didn't get to any of those, but okay, now today's a new day. I'm going to start a new practice, and how do I want to be with each of these tasks? So it can seem like that's an extra task on top of all of the tasks that we already have. But I encourage people to even just take just 2 to 3 seconds of just the thought of how. How do I want to be? Even if we don't write it out, just as we're going to each different task, just 2 to 3 seconds to say, how? How am I going to be when I engage in this task? And then that makes everything go a little bit smoother and feels a little bit better at the end of the day.
Wonderful. I really like that one. I'm going to actually integrate that into my to-do list, which I do pretty regularly, because that way it'll help me to remember that I like to do this, to enjoy this task that I have to do, or to
Yes.
do this one peacefully. So
Yeah.
thank you very much, Janie. That was really great. And hopefully the person who asked the question appreciates it too.
Yeah.
So we've come to the end of our session today, and I again want to thank you for sharing your wisdom with us, and also to thank everyone who's joined us, wherever you're joining us from. We do these webinars every month, and I try to bring in people just like Shani who are experts in their field who can give us some tips of how to really be present in our lives, to do our activism and enjoy our lives as well. And I think these sorts of tools help us do that. Thank you so much. And next month, we're going to have Chase Avlord join us he's going to present. He's an activist with the group Direct Action Everywhere. So we do try to bring in diverse voices. A couple announcements. Just hope to see you guys. We're having a mindfulness retreat this weekend, and we will be having a couple of presenters who've been part of our webinar series, Lanny Mulerath, who wrote The Mindful Vegan, and also Allison Rivers Sampson, who did a webinar for us a couple months ago about self-care. So if you're in the Bay Area, in San Francisco Bay Area, please join us. You can reach out to me directly if you are interested and able to come at Sustainable Activism at idausa.org. You can check out the retreat on our retreats page, which is idausa.org/retreats. We hope to, if we don't see you in person, we hope to see you next month on our webinar. Also, you can tune in next week. We'll have a vegan spirituality online gathering with a couple called the Vegan Warriors, and they are trying to include in our activism mind, body, and spirit. So we're going to hear from them next week. So wonderful to have all these great people to share their special tools with us, and also just to be part of our community, because that's really what this is about, is creating community, even if it's an online one, because we are all together in our actions and in our beliefs and values. So thanks to everyone so much for joining us today, and hope you all have a wonderful evening, and Shani as well, have a wonderful evening, and take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.